Yo, 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 what's up, everybody? It's Cody, and we are bringing you yet again another Keeping It Geekly. This is your number one stop for all things geek culture, from comic books to video games and so much more. And man, oh man, do I have some heavy hitting issues and news for you. But first and foremost, I am excited to reveal an announcement. As you guys know, I strive to bring you Keeping It Geekly every week. We try to keep the freshest books and news out on the market. So I'm really stoked to tell you guys we're not going to only be bringing you one, but we're going to be throwing in two. And the second one is going to be Marvel. So this is going to be a little bit rough starting out. I do need to get my time adjusted. But without further hesitation, let's dive right in to what you guys came here for. So the very first one's going to be a pretty spicy one. It looks like Riot shut down a fan-made League of Legends game after the creator says Riot tried to extort them. I'm going to clear the air and just be honest with you guys. I haven't really played any League of Legends. I know jack shit about League of Legends. So hopefully I don't sound too much like a jackass during this. So with that being said, guys, let's just dive right in and just try to make the most of it. Now, it looks like for about 5 years, a group of diehard League of Legends fans have been working on their own game called Chronoshift, which is a legacy server that lets players travel back to the old decade version of the ever-evolving MOBA. So it would appear that Riot has sent a cease and desist to Chronoshift after a exchange between a Riot employee and one of the developers from Chronoshift has been posted on Reddit. Now this you need to take with a grain of salt, but let's dive right into it. Let's kind of see what it says. So on Reddit, they did acknowledge that they can't really 100% prove just how valid this is. So I had to go to a paste spin to check it out. So let's go ahead and just kind of read this message and just see what it says. Hey, Zed here from Riot Games security team. I'm sure you can probably imagine why we might be reaching out to you, but in the interest of keeping things brief, we need to talk. I see you're on Discord now. Shall we? And if you would like to pause, you can pause and read this. This is a little bit more fleshed out on Discord. This is their conversation. Once again, take it with a grain of salt. There's nothing that could prove that this is 100% real. But here's a little bit of food for thought if you would like to dive into it. You know, with all the work that Chronoshift put into this game, I could see why they would be upset. I could see why they went the route they did to post this on Reddit to get the masses behind them in efforts to, I guess, maybe keep their game alive, even though I would almost imagine that in any court of law, it would probably just get thrown out and Riot would be, you know, the victors. Riot, on the other hand, they do own the property, but they are going about it in a little bit of a dirty manner. It would, you know, that whole extortion part, if that's true, you know, shame on them. I could see why they would want to close that game down, even though it's not meant to compete against them, and even though it's not being sold for any money. You know, they have to make revenue at some point, whether it's, you know, cosmetics or pay to win, who knows. But Riot is definitely losing face with this move. But another company that's in the good spotlight that's actually saving some face recently is Microsoft. And it looks like its accessibility chief is working on closing the disability divide. Microsoft's Chief Accessibility Officer, Jenny LaFleury, is making some noise and is providing some bridges for those who are disabled and those who aren't, and closing that gap in between. It looks like Microsoft is launching a 5-year initiative plan to help close that disability divide. And this is going to provide resources and other opportunities to people who are disabled and those who aren't, and close that gap in between. This initiative is going to be putting in a lot of work, from creating new technology, even increasing Microsoft's percentage of workforce that have disabilities, and helping people with disabilities gain further educations and job skills. Microsoft's actually been known for tackling disability issues for decades. Little did I know. They were the very first tech company to create a Chief Accessibility Officer. That role was created in 2010. 5 years ago, LaFleury became the second person to take the job over. So she's actually been heading the role for quite some time and putting in that work. I always think it's really awesome when really big name companies take the mantle to help those who are disabled and to provide better footing for them. You know, standing ovation for Microsoft to really be leading the area in that field and to make strides, leaps and bounds for those who otherwise might have a more difficult chance of attaining job or further opportunities. Now, our last piece of geekly news is going to be on a little bit of a lighter note. It would appear that James Gunn had a chance and sat down and discussed directing the Suicide Squad. And just the craziness that ensured how WB gave him such insane creative freedom that it frightened him. So it looks like James Gunn's recent interview with Total Film Games Radar just went live, and about every news outlet is covering it. And man, oh man, is there a lot of dirt to uncover. First and foremost, Warner Brothers gave him the okay to kill whoever he wanted and everyone he wanted. Not only that, he could start a whole brand new team if he ever so desired. And pretty much just what I'm kind of already assuming, this 100% control, it leaves James Gunn at the foot if there's anything to blame. Warner Brothers, pretty much, their hands are washed. And that is kind of what I thought. You know, James Gunn is a phenomenal director. Don't get me wrong. He's put out a lot of awesome titles. But with all the backlash on some of these movies that have came out recently, it would almost make sense that a studio would not want any backlash to hit them. And pretty much with a heavy hitter like James Gunn, I would almost say it would be a smart bet just to let the man do what he wants. As soon as Disney let him go from Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Warner Brothers was knocking on the door, and they were giving him the script to write whatever he wanted. It looked like there was 2 different DC projects and a third solo project, I think, that he himself wrote. So just a little synopsis for the film, and keep in mind, some of these comics are running pretty much foot in foot. We are getting Task Force X, in DC Comics as we speak, first and foremost. We pretty much start at the super prison with the highest mortality rate in all of the United States of America. And there's going to be a laundry list of villains from Bloodsport, Peacemaker, Captain Boomerang, Ratcatcher number 2, Savant, King Shark, Blackguard, Javelin, and Harley Quinn. And as you can see, there's just a multitude of actors that are just filling up the roles. This is going to be a film, I think, that is going to give the last one a lot of redemption. Well, Geeks and Geekettes, that wraps up this week in Geek. But stay tuned, we got some fresh polls coming right out the oven, and we're starting out with Batman Detective Comics, issue 1035, written by Marcio Tamaki, with art being done by Dan Morrow. Now, this issue is a little bit of a wild one. It starts off with police investigating the disappearance of Sarah Worth. She's one of the old money from Gotham that actually built half the city. Batman knows better, though. Most people who go missing in Gotham aren't coming home. We then fast forward to Mayor Nakano, who immediately wants the police chief on the line stat as he's conversing with his staff, and they're just talking, and they're trying to figure out what happened and who could have done this. It wasn't small time. It wasn't likely that it was any organized crime family that's around Gotham. You know, someone much higher on the food chain has to be at the helm of this. So far, there's been zero ransom for this magnitude of character. You know, Sarah's an established name within Gotham, and everybody knows her worth, no pun intended. Batman's then tipped off that there was a manhole that was tampered with, and we see him dive deep into the sewers, and you just see him calculating the outcome of different routes and escape plans, and pretty much he pinpoints that the sewer is the only one, and he walks upon a rather bloody and disturbing crime scene. As he's expressing his sorrows to Sarah, we see the Gotham PD descend upon him, and it was a very tense and wild moment as you just see them pull their guns and begin firing. He's running, he gets clipped by a bullet, and then one of the other bullets ricochets off his cape and strikes an officer, thus placing Batman as the main suspect for this gruesome and brutal murder. We see Sarah's dad, Mr. Worth, a monster of a man. He stands at 8 foot, and he's just fully ripped and built like a tank, and he demands to know who took his daughter. And Mr. Worth is not an opponent to be trifled with. Something is afloat in Gotham, and it's a lot closer to Mayor Nakano than he even realizes. But we don't know if Bruce is even going to have time to react, because Mr. Worth is going to eventually find out who killed Sarah, and everybody's pointing the finger at Batman. Now, to be honest, I had an idea something was brewing. We were introduced to Mr. Worth early in the issue, and seeing Batman fighting it out with him on the cover kind of had me wondering how the two were going to eventually meet up, and what perfect way to put the two face to face than to have Mr. Worth think that Batman killed his beloved daughter. Now, this leads me to our next issue, which is going to be an Infinite Frontier issue, Robin issue number 1, written by Joshua Williamson, with art being done by Gleb Malinoff. So this begins with Batman reflecting on Robin in a very loving manner. We see just the growth of Robin and everything leading up to this point, but it's all cut short as Batman asks for a report in, and the Bat family all hits the lines, letting him know they haven't seen any sign of Damian at all. Damian might be well trained, but he needs more than just training, and Batman has a pretty good idea that he wasn't there enough for him. With Alfred dying, and just all the events in Gotham and supervillains that have happened recently, Damian's been under a lot of pressure. And then we go to a pretty interesting panel of Robin going up against King Snake, who is a gang lord, a formidable martial artist who is blind. I wasn't very versed on the character himself, so I had to really do a quick search to give you guys an idea of who he's up against. And it's pretty comical to see King Snake give this really drawn out speech, and then Robin just pretty much answers with a kick to the face and just dismantles the guy. Later on, we find out that's actually Bane's father, which threw me for a loop. We then see Robin take his earnings from winning the tournament and runs off to sit and read some manga. And it was a really awesome, heartwarming panel because for once it seemed like Damian was just being a kid. He's interrupted, though, by the ghost of Alfred, which confronts him about this whole situation. And Robin rebuttals, saying Batman did the same exact thing. And that's where we kind of see Robin coming into the shoes of Batman, I guess. Batman went through the same trial, so Robin should as well, you know? That interaction is cut short, though, as the cloaked figure from the fight appears to give him the marker that grants him access to the League of Lazarus tournament. Thus, the story of Robin begins, truly. Now, this was once again another issue that I thoroughly enjoyed. I always love reading about Damian Wade and his snide attitude and the lengths he'll go to drive his father crazy. It appears with this issue that he goes to the end of the world to do so. And that's going to bring us our last issue of the week. And that's going to be Teen Titans Academy issue number 2, written by Tim Sheridan, with art being done by Rafael Sandovala. Now, this issue starts off rather bloody as we see a woman in a wheelchair running away from Red X as he's chasing after her, knocks her down. And as she's scrambling to get up, she pleads with him just to kill her already, just to skip the game, just to kill her already. And that leads us into Task Force X, where we just see all the kids being kids in the lunchroom, with Bolt in particular, which is the girl from the wheelchair. Now, Bolt is a woman who has disabilities where she's missing both her legs and she uses what's called blades. She's also a speedster. So keep that in mind. She's a disabled speedster, which I thought was a really, really cool thing. Now, this is a flashback from 72 hours from the moment where she's knocked down by Red X. And it was a nice breakdown. We see Cyborg give her the nickname of Bolt as she's kind of just introducing herself, and then she just takes off at the speed of light. We're then given a lukewarm introduction to a superhero named Matt, who is pretty arrogant. He deems himself the strongest out of everyone at the Academy. He doesn't want to exercise. He just wants to play this unique version of chess. And he just kind of seemed really suspicious. You know, it gets even more abstract as Cyborg asks for an origin story, and Matt gives us that classical hero trope where he doesn't even remember where he's from. Why do all these superheroes always get amnesia? We then pivot to Dick Grayson and Starfire talking, and he's needed back in Bloodhaven, and Starfire's not too happy with that, especially with Barbara being the person who he needs to go to. That was a little bit of an awkward and tense situation, but it was not long-lived, as we see Dick Grayson stumble onto Red X, and Red X is bringing some friends, and they are not who you are going to suspect. And I'm telling you, that last tidbit has got me screaming for some more, because man, Red X, with the combination of the team that is shown at the end, is going to just be mind-blowing. That being said, guys, that does wrap up this week's Keeping It Geekly. Real quick and foremost, though, I do want to tell you about our Mario Kart 8 Deluxe Tournament. We're going to be hosting it this upcoming Sunday, May 2nd at 11 p.m. EST. Now, the top 3 contestants are going to win a cash prize that's going to total up to $150 with a floating prize just to anyone who's remaining at the end. So even if you're not that good, there's a chance for you to walk away with some cash. Now, if you want more information about that, feel free to leave a comment down below asking me how you can get in. With that being said, guys, you can follow me on my respective social media platforms at Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, and so much more at Job for a Cody. And as always, guys, keep it geekly.